everyone, welcome to the lecture number 60 of this NPTEL lecture series on charging infrastructure, and today we will continue our discussion on charging stations and the different methods of communication which we were discussing in the last lecture. So we have discussed what are the things which are there in the charging stations. We know we have the central management system put in by the charging station service provider. Then we have different EVSEs, which you can say they are different chargers which are placed in a charging station. They will be communicating with the central management system using protocol will be defined by the OCPP, and how the messages need to be exchanged, that will be defined by the OCPP protocol. This will help the charging station service provider to ensure that interoperability between different EVSEs from different manufacturer is maintained with the central management system which is being provided by some other company. So with that, the interoperability are maintained, the data standardization are maintained, the simplicity in implementation has been maintained, the scalability has been possible. So for that purpose, OCPP protocol has been adopted across the world for doing the communication between the EVSEs and the central management system. And then we have seen the implementation of OCPP. Now here we have seen the two kinds of OCPP implementation. One is using SOAP based OCPP implementation, and second one was JSON based OCPP implementation. The SOAP uses XML based data representation, while the JSON itself is a data representation, and they uses WebSocket based communication to do the communication between the CMS and the EVSE. Now this XML based data representation are quite heavy duty communication due to its architecture, while the JSON based implementation, which is the data representation, uses WebSocket connection, or HTTP can be also be used, and these JSON are compact, lightweight, and that's when it can be implemented faster, as a result of which JSON is being adopted across various manufacturers. This is heavy duty implementation, this is lightweight. So because it is lightweight, they are quite faster and easy implementable, because the messages are human readable and can be easily understood by the user. And we have seen some of the examples of OCPP 1.6J indicate the JSON message formats. It has three kinds of messages. You have call, which is like a request, you have call result, which is like a response to that request, and then you have the call error. In case if there are error, then it need to be intimated that there are some errors which has happened. So these are the three different kinds of messages which are being done. All the three messages are of given format. It has the message type ID, which indicate what kind of messages are there. It has the message ID, that particular message has a unique ID, you can say call ID as well as message ID. This is been done for the receiver to understand what message ID it has to respond to, and once the receiver responds to the corresponding message having given a message ID, so it has to respond it with having the same message ID. So that means call result will have the same message ID, which is again the unique message ID. And then you have the call error, which includes error codes, message ID, message type number. So it has the message type number, the first part is message type number, then message ID, or you can say message unique ID. Now this message ID for every call messages are unique. It should not be same as that of the previous call messages, otherwise it will not communicate, or it will report an error. So it has to be unique. For that, message type number for call is 2, for call result is 3, for call error is 4. So different message type number is there. Now why message type number? It is for the receiver to understand what kind of message it is being sent. Then after message ID you have action. Again this action is like the name of the action which has to be performed. Generally for call messages the actions are been defined, for call results generally those actions are need not to be there. Then you have the payload. Payload is like the data part of the message that carries the specific information which is being exchanged between the EVAC or charge point and the central management system or central system via messages. In call result, you have message type number, you have message ID which is same as that of the call message, and then you have the payload for that, because action is not necessarily to be reported to, so that can be there. In call error, we have message type number, we have message ID which is the same message ID as that of the call message, because the receiver, once it receives the message ID, it will decide whether to respond to that message or whether to report an error to the sender. So, whenever it has to report an error, it has to include the number corresponding to the same call message which is being received from the sender. Then after message ID, you have error codes, you have error description, and then you have the error details. So, this has to be included in that particular message whenever that particular kind of message is being sent. We can see one example in last class also. We have seen one example where we will define for the boot notification request, we can say. Now, in the boot notification request message, or you can say call message, so it will start from message type number which is been defined as a 2. Then you have the unique message ID which is again maximum 36 character string. We can, let's say, define. So, this is the message type ID, this is the, you can say, message ID, unique ID, message unique ID, and again this has to be maximum 36 character. Here we have defined just 8 characters for our simplicity implementation. Then comes your action. So, again the action is nothing but the name of the action which you would like to do after sending this message. So, that action is nothing but, let's say, if it is a boot notification, we will define it as a boot notification. And then after defining this action, so this is the nothing but the action field of the call message, you can say this is a call message. And then after boot notification, you have to define the payload. So, in this payload, which is nothing but the data part of the message, it has specific fields defined. Against that, the data has to be sent. Basically, it is the data content sent inside the messages. As we have discussed in the last class, for boot notification request message, what are the fields? Similarly, for every messages too, the payload is being defined with a specific fields, which you can obtain by going through the OCPP 1.6J document or other version documents. So, in that we have, let us say, first required field is nothing but the charge point vendor. Now, charge point indicates the EVAC vendor. So, you can just define that vendor name, let us say, vendor X, we can say. Then we have the second required field which has to be sent with this message is nothing but your charge point model. Now, this too has to be sent. So, let us say if we define single charger, anything you can define this, you can write down, you can close the payload. So, this is nothing but your payload, and that is when you can close down your message. So, this is one way by which you will send the boot notification request. Now, to respond to this, if after once the receiver receives this call, they will respond to that call. So, let us define boot notification confirmation. Confirm, if we see, so it is nothing but a call result, a message, nothing but a kind of a call result. So, again, since it is a call result or it is a response to that request, boot notification confirmation, or you can say a response to that request. So, we have to go and implement the call result message. We have to see the call result message format. It is started with the message type ID, which is 3, since it is a response or you can say call result message. So it is a message type ID. Then again, since it is a response to that particular request, so we must include the message ID, which is a unique ID for the call message or you can say for the request message. We must write down the same message ID. That is how when this message reaches to the sender which has initiated the call message, they will come to know that it is the response to that particular message. So again, so the message ID will be the same message ID which was there for the call message. So this is the message ID, same as call message ID. It is necessary, one has to keep the same message ID. And then after that, since here it is a response to a call message which was boot notification, so we did not to write any action. We have to just define the payload, which include the data which has to be sent by the receiver to the sender which has initiated the boot notification request. So we will only write the required field in that payload. So that is nothing but first is our status. Now this status is accepted. Now if it is not accepted, what thing to be given, that particular thing you can see from the OCPP document. I am just giving you the thing for this particular message. And then comes either the next field which is the required field in that payload, which is the current time. It is a case sensitive, so we should write current time. Now that current time, it is the date time format. So let us say it is 2025, assume it is the August month, so it is 08, assume it is the 15th of August, so it is 15/8/2025, and then followed by the time. So this date, and then you can define the time, assume it is morning 10 AM, so it is 10 minutes, seconds, assume it is 30 seconds, and then we have, well, let us say 4 seconds we are at that time. So this is the next field we have sent in the payload, and then the last field is nothing but your heartbeat interval. Now this heartbeat interval you can give any, let us give after every 10 seconds there should be some heartbeat signal to be coming in. So we will define, let us say 10, or you can just define 100 as well. So with that the payload gets over, and that is when we can close down this message. So once you receive the call messages, everything is fine, so you will send this particular message. If everything is not fine, the status is not accepted, then you have to write not accepted and go on. So these are the messages which has to be sent between the CMS and the EVSEs, and whenever you are saying that my EVSE is compliant to this OCPP and the CMS is compliant to OCPP, they have to follow this message format while defining the messages, and scheduling of those messages, all those things will be defined accordingly. Now this you can use different server frameworks already available. You can use Python languages to define these messages, and the structuring of those messages can be defined in order to do different functionalities in the messages. So this is how one can implement the OCPP, and one can easily go through OCPP document and can able to understand what all different messages are there, what all the payload fields are there which can be sent, what are required fields that you can define, and then they can implement those messages step by step in their controllers which are actually doing the communications between CMS and the EVSE. Now we have discussed only one message, which is the boot notification request message. The other messages like start transaction message, stop transaction message. So that message has to be defined in this particular format only, and they need to be structured such that after boot notification the configuration key has to be sent, then several steps has to be followed before going to start transaction, and then after start transaction, before ending the session, the logging, all those things, step by step that procedure has to be structured while developing this communication between the CMS and the EVSE. Now let us discuss the OCPP profile. So what I mean by OCPP profile, OCPP profiles are the one which will define what different things one has to do once they incorporate that OCPP profile. So, one can introduce different profiles. So, for example, one profile could be core certification profile, one profile could be security profile, one profile could be smart charging profile. Different profiles can be incorporated in that OCPP implementation. However, the core certification profile must be present, which include basic authentication, different security event notification, booting, configuring, resetting of charging stations, stop transaction, local start transaction, check transaction status, remote start and stop transaction, a remote unlock connector, remote trigger, change availability of charging station EVSC connector, clock aligned meters, sample meter values, retrieve log information, get clear customer information, secure firmware updates, clear authorization data in cache. So, the moment you say core certification profile, in core certification profile the basic authentication has to be there. So, you need to define that authentication message and you have to write down that authentication message. Then in that certification you will have remote start and stop. So, remote start and stop request, remote start and stop confirmation or response message you have to structure while doing the implementation. Now, similarly, there are other profiles one can include, advanced feature profiles one can include, different profiles one can make by including different messages and can perform required functionality. Now, that was the thing which we are discussing for OCPP 1.6J. Now, in OCPP 2.0.1, they come up with the new security features. They come up with the provision for ISO 15118 implementation for vehicle to grid functionality. They come up with the features with which it can be easily scalable. So, all those things are there. However, this 2.0.1 is actually dividing the different functionality of this communication between the CMS and the EVSE into 16 functional blocks, and the messages will be defined for implementing those 16 functional blocks. So, for example, one functional block is security functional block, you have provisioning functional block which include boot notifications, configuration of the EVSEs, so that will be there in provisioning. Then you have authorization, then you have local authorization list management. If the user is already been registered, those management is been there, that different transactions which is been done, remote control of EVSEs are being there, availability, CMS can able to change the availability of the charging station. So, once that availability is changed, so one can see in their apps that chargers are busy and accordingly scheduling can be done. Then reservation, so that function block will enable the reservation of the charging station beforehand. Different tariffs and cost implementation, different metering informations like what are the voltage level, current level for basically maintaining the EVSEs. Now, one can implement smart charging features, basically optimally utilize the EVSEs such that EV demand can be intelligently managed centrally, so that features can be provided. For example, in a charging station, let us say if there are 10 EVs which are there to charge from those EVSE, but if let us say the grid is heavily loaded, so the intelligent features can be implemented where the proper scheduling of those EV which are coming in can be done such that the overcrowding or the difficulty for the user can be avoided. Then you have firmware management where one can easily update the firmwares which are there. Certificate management, that means whenever the communication gets set up, so certificate is being exchanged between the EVS and CMS, so that management is been done. Diagnostic, what display message has to be there in the human machine interface of the EVSEs and also in the app, that functionality has been there. Then the data transfer, in this enables actually the exchange of data between the CMS and the EVSE, basically to perform different customized functionalities like different services one can provide for the user, different charging station operator can provide. Then bidirect power transfer functionality, that means from the vehicle to the grid. Then you have distributed energy resource control. So, let us say if in the charging station you have some renewable energy sources also, so you can use that and you can control that via using this OCPP 2.2.1 protocol. And also they have defined battery swapping functionality block as well. That means whenever you have battery swapping stations, what all messages need to be exchanged between the battery swapping point to the central management system. So all those different functionalities have been incorporated, and to implement each functionality there are different messages which has to be implemented, which has to be structured accordingly while doing the implementation of this OCPP protocol. So as of now what we have discussed how the EVSEs, different EVSEs which are present in the charging station, 1 EVSE, 2 EVSE, 3 EVSE, 4, and this you have central management system. They will be communicating with different EVSEs, how they are communicating, using what protocols, what kind of messages are being exchanged between these, all those things we have seen, and they are done following these OCPP protocols. Now in this EVSEs, if you look very carefully, we have not discussed how the power distributions will be taking place. So let us discuss that, how the power distributions will be taking place. Now broadly if you look very carefully, we have different chargers. We have home chargers which are generally AC chargers, you can say, and whenever we have AC charger we have onboard chargers as well with us. And then we have the DC fast chargers having power level going more than 25 kilowatt, and they are also the off board charger because power conversion is placed outside the EV. And then you have extreme fast chargers, you can say extreme fast charger. Now this extreme fast charger is things greater than 350 kilowatt and all, with a single EVSE, or you can say single charger supporting that 350 kilowatt. So in all the things, if you look very carefully, generally these things can be done by using our low voltage AC distribution system, either using single phase distribution or a 3 phase with 400 or 440 volt AC distribution can be done. However, for the fast charger it is again, it's the low voltage AC distribution, 3 phase low voltage AC distribution line which is there, which will be sent to the DC fast charger for doing the conversion from AC to DC. And then you have extreme fast chargers where generally they could be done using medium voltage AC distribution. From medium voltage AC distribution they can be done using 3 phase medium voltage AC distribution, it can be done. Now whenever you are doing this extreme fast charger or very high power charging will be taking place, you will be needing a dedicated transformer, you will require a dedicated switch gear to support that particular charging station. So for example, if a charging station has extreme fast charger, or you can say very high power DC chargers, so directly the MVAC which is 11 kV which will be directly coming to the charging station, and then you will provide the dedicated transformer and switch gear to take out the power and give it to that particular different supply equipment which are being placed in the charging station. Now if you look very carefully in medium voltage AC distribution system, generally these are very high voltages, so we require either the multi-level converters, or you can say the stacked kind of converters, because the voltage levels are higher, so you require the switches which can able to block those high voltages. So in that case, one modular approach one can take. However, there are different approaches one can take. One can take the low frequency AC transformer and step it down and then convert it to the low voltage AC and then give it to the different EVSE. But however, in that particular case cable thickness will go up, and that's when the cost becomes higher and also the implementation becomes quite difficult. So one can take modular approach where one can take 3-phase connection and can give AC to DC, or using the rectifiers one can use, and then can generate a DC, and then one can take DC to AC, high frequency AC, and then having the isolation and then followed by AC to DC conversion, and that's when one can step it down using this transformer, and that's when one can actually come up with the your DC plus and DC minus low voltage DC line, low voltage DC distribution one can create. Similarly, one can connect one can have three-phase module, and one can take this is, let's say if this is the A phase, one can take the B phase. From B phase one can again make the same modular approach one can take, generating the DC, then DC to AC, followed by the transformer, high frequency transformer. One can operate this at, mostly if IGBTs are there, it will be somewhere in 5 to 10 kilohertz range. If it is SICs, it will go up to 10 to 50 kilohertz range as well. And then again this is also connected to DC bus, and then finally this will go and connect here. From here similarly one can take the C phase and then again put the AC to DC, generate the DC, and one can do that. Since this voltage is so high that one could not able to get the devices, one can connect so many modules in series, and that's when it goes up, and then in this module it will come from here, three things will come out, and that's when it will get shorted. So with this particular approach what you can get is, for A phase, if you look very carefully, A phase you have this converter, and then you have this different three phase module. There are so many modules like this module, there could be several modules like this, in so many are connected in series, and this will go from A phase terminal and neutral terminal, and this is again will go and connect it to the DC bus. So this is the modular approach one can take, and then can directly connect this to this MVAC line, and using this high frequency transformer one can implement modularity approach and can able to achieve the extreme fast charger at very high power. So these are all modules one can make, and step by step the modules can be connected in series to take care of that medium voltage AC distribution, and per phase wise they can connect it into the series fashion. And a lot of researchers are working on this to come up with the different optimization scheme to optimally design this high frequency transformer, optimally choose those switches such that the power losses and those things can be reduced and they can be modular. And with modularity you can also do a lot of redundant operations as well, in case something fails out, fault right through schemes can also be implemented. Now with this approach one can do several things. One can easily control output, a customer side voltage levels, customer side demand. One can easily control the grid side requirements like power factor and power quality one can maintain. At the same time one can also facilitate the bidirectional power functionality from this DC bus to the AC bus. And now from this DC bus which has been generated, let me draw this one. So we have a DC minus line, DC minus line, and from the DC minus line one can have the small DC-DC converters connected to the EV, and several DC-DC converters can be connected and they can be connected to EVs. Like that several things can be there, and EVs can be there, and this is where one can create that low voltage DC line, and from the DC line individually one can have DC-DC converter and then connect it to the EV, and this DC-DC converter controls the voltage and current which the EV demands at the charger output. So this is one modular approach one can follow. There could be several other modular approaches which could be there. So high frequency transformer provides the isolation, which is a galvanic isolation, which is one of the requirement between the EV and the grid, and at the same time it is the power dense solution because our transformer is actually seeing the high frequency AC. So DC-DC creates a DC link, then DC-AC will convert the DC link into the high frequency AC, which is seen by the transformer. Because of the transformer action at the output secondary, you will have the high frequency AC which gets converted into DC and then connected to the low voltage DC bus. And from the low voltage DC bus, individual EVSEs will have the DC-DC converter. So you can have the low voltage distribution line, and then you can have a dedicated DC-DC converter which will be connected to the EV, and that's when EV can be charged, and this can be one of the modular approaches. So like this one can also look for different multi-level based AC-DC converters, then multi-level based high frequency DC-AC converters, then high frequency AC-DC converters, and that's when one can do several modular approaches while implementing the extreme fast charger for the EV charging. However, it requires a dedicated transformer. That's when directly from the MVAC grid which is coming, it has a dedicated transformer unit. In case if this is not there, then one has to provide the low frequency transformer, such a big transformer. So imagine if you have 350 kilowatt per charger, and let's say if you have 10 chargers, you will have 3.5 megawatt peak power demand, and that's when the transformer size will be huge. So one need to see the modular approach while implementing extreme fast charger having more than 350 kilowatt power level at the output it can support. This is a scenario which we have at present, where we have this kind of different charging systems which are available. This home charger, AC charger, onboard charger does not require a dedicated transformer. However, this DC fast charger may require a simplicity in that way. It is like you have 3-phase 400 volt line coming in, then you can provide the low frequency transformer, and then from the low frequency transformer you can directly take it to the power conversion unit of EVSE, or you can say EVSE 1, and then it is to the EV. Similarly, you can take EVSE 2 power conversion unit. We know what is power conversion unit, our AC-DC and then DC-DC. Then we have another power converter EVSE 3 to EV. This could be a standard DC fast charging station power architecture, and this is the power architecture of extreme fast charging stations, or you can say extreme fast charging stations you can say. So these are the things which are there in both the cases. Charging station require dedicated transformers. In this case it is a low frequency transformer, in this case it is the high frequency transformer. So this is nothing but this particular thing, and this is nothing but the power architecture for this particular extreme fast charging station. Now if you look very carefully, as of now charging station has been developed, they are taking power directly from the grid, and that grid could be obtained either from thermal power stations or some renewable energy based power stations, either solar power stations or using wind power stations. But majority, if you look in this case and in this one, they are taking directly power from the grid. However, in case of extreme fast charging stations or in case of DC fast charging stations, so one can easily integrate the renewable energy sources, and one can make sure that one has the sustainable solution towards that charging system. So one of the example of the power architecture of the power architecture of renewable energy integration with the charging station. So here one example is using the AC coupling. So power architecture of renewable energy integration using AC coupling. Now in this thing, what we generally do is, from MVAC grid it could be 11 kV 3-phase grid. We are providing the low frequency transformer. However, this transformer becomes very bulky, so this one need to see. Then from here they will generate the low voltage AC distribution, could be 400 volt 3-phase AC distribution they can generate. And then what one can do is one can use the different energy storage. For example, one can implement this energy storage using batteries, one can use the fuel cell stack, anything one can use. One can also integrate PV panels, one can also integrate wind power stations. However, from windmill one can create AC to DC, and then from DC to AC and then connect. So one can integrate wind power, battery power, and one can also integrate the solar power as well. So every renewable energy storage will have this dedicated power conversion which converts output of that renewable energy sources to the required output, which can be connected to the low voltage AC distribution system. And then from this low voltage AC distribution system one can do it for different EVSCs. One can, let us say, EVSC 1, EVSC 2, which is there. Again, this is, I am talking about power conversion unit because we are only talking about power architecture. Again, either it could be battery power or it could be fuel cell, green hydrogen based fuel cell, that thing one can say. So with this thing different EVSCs can be integrated. Now one can also do the bidirectional functionality of this, EVSC power conversion unit. So one can use EV effectively as the energy resources and can create the microgrid and can support this low voltage AC distribution bus and can support some of the different loads of charging station as well. So basically one can provide the back to back power flow through that. Similarly, since we have the battery power, we can also with this particular approach support the islanding mode. Let us say if the grid is not there, one can easily island this particular charging station, and that is when the grid is not there, the EV can be charged because we have the battery sources there. One can do islanding mode, one can also do standalone mode. In case when we have good wind power, we can just eliminate this grid and we can still supply power to the vehicle. Similarly, in the daytime one can use this power from the solar panels as well. Similarly, one can use this power from the solar panel and can charge the battery for providing the support to charge the vehicle in the night time, and that is when reduce the loading from the conventional grid which has been coming over here. So this is one way by which the low voltage distribution bus one can provide and connect different renewable energy sources or different energy storage with these low voltage AC distribution via the required power conversion unit or required AC-DC or DC-AC converters. So this is the one configuration one can integrate. So with this, the charging station service provider can also support grid, because this different distributed energy resources can also support reactive power and the active power, or you can say real power, to support the peak load demand. Since they are supporting the reactive power and the real power, one can do the voltage control, one can provide the frequency control, and one can also do the optimal scheduling of these different energy resources such that optimally we can use them and ensure the power distribution is quite efficient. So they can provide different ancillary services as well. Using this thing, and this is possible only when they support both the reactive and real power, because if these are bidirectional in nature, they can support the reactive power as well by doing the appropriate controlling of this individual power converters, and that is when charging station service provider can also provide this functionality as well. That means integration of this renewable energy can also provide different ancillary services as well, like voltage control, frequency control, and optimal scheduling of this charging stations or energy resources. Then comes another type of coupling. Again, it's a power architecture coupling. Again, a power architecture where you can integrate the PV, you can integrate the energy storage. Most of the time energy storage is basically a DC energy storage. So you can have the MVAC grid at 11 kV or more than 11 kV, 3 phase. Then one can provide the low frequency transformer, and then low frequency transformer will convert into the low voltage AC, and then from this one can provide the AC DC converter and then create the DC distribution. And since most of our renewable energy sources are DC voltage sources, so we can just have DC DC converter, we can actually connect to the DC bus, and then on the power conversion unit of different EVACs also we can have just the DC DC converter. So if you look very carefully here, we have the DC AC at the integration of different renewable energy storage systems, and AC DC for different EVACs we have at the front end. By just doing the DC distribution, we can eliminate different AC DC converters, and that's when we can actually reduce our power component in the charging station, having integrated the renewable energy sources and energy storage systems. So we can say that this is the power architecture of integrating renewables and energy storage system using DC coupling. So one can do that way as well, and again you can make this one as a bidirectional in nature. So in this way you can provide the optimal loading of different EVACs can be provided, and that's when one can implement different features. Since here we have a low frequency transformer which are bulkier in size, bulkier, voluminous in size, because we have already discussed in our course that the low frequency transformer will be bulkier in size. So one can implement power architecture which has a high frequency transformer. So again it is greater than 11 kV 3 phase system. We can convert that low frequency which is 50 hertz or 60 hertz line to the high frequency AC. It is the high frequency AC which is being seen by the transformer, and from this one you will again convert into high frequency AC, and from high frequency AC one can easily convert into DC and then create the low voltage DC distribution, and then you can integrate this energy storage as well as PV just by putting the DC DC converter into the low voltage distribution bus. This can do bidirectional energy transfer, this can do single direction, and also you can provide just the DC DC converter in the power conversion unit of different EVACs, EVAC 1, EVAC 2, to actually charge the vehicle using a DC. Again it will provide the power dense solution, power dense and high efficiency solution it provides. So both things can be done with this, and that's when another power architecture with DC coupling, where you can integrate different energy storage and different renewables with the charging station, and where you can have different EVACs can also support different this LVDC distribution bus. Now if we provide the bidirectional functionality of, if we can provide the bidirectional functionality of power conversion unit of EVAC, we can do vehicle to grid operation, we can do vehicle to home operation, we can do vehicle to vehicle power transfer, we can do a grid to vehicle operation. We have only studied grid to vehicle operation. One can do vehicle to grid power transfer, one can do vehicle to home power transfer, one can do vehicle to vehicle power transfer, provided we have the bidirectional functionality of the power conversion unit of the different EVSEs we have discussed in the previous lectures. So, if we can provide this V2G, V2H, V2V functionality in the charger, then we can easily create the microgrid with the EV. So, each EV with the EVSE is connecting to the grid in the home or in the charging station will actually form the microgrid, and one can implement hierarchical control one can do. So, now with the microgrid created by EV, by different EVs, will be one of the research problem which a lot of researchers are working on, primarily because if we have V2G operation, if we have V2H operation, if we have vehicle to vehicle operation, then you are actually creating a microgrid where different EVs which have the distributed energy resources are actually connecting to the grid. So, in that case you require a coordinated control across different distributed energy resources, such that the power grid with which it is been connected to these different distributed energy resources which are being connected are actually operated in a coordinated functional. So, there are researches which are happening using the hierarchical control, providing the tertiary control, secondary control, then followed by primary control. So, a lot of researchers are working on solving the problems when a lot of EVs are connected to grid with bidirectional power transfer capabilities. That means the power conversion unit can allow the power to flow from the battery to the grid. That is when different EVs are potentially act as a distributed energy resources. And this distributed energy resources are need to be controlled, so that the grid to which it is been connected should not get into trouble. So, those things are being considered by a lot of researchers who are working power system areas, implementing different levels of hierarchy controls. So, in this course we have started off with understanding the different ecosystem related to charging. Then we have studied what are the components in the AC charger and DC chargers, what do you mean by EVSEs. We have discussed in detail different power conversion unit which are available at present in different DC chargers, AC chargers, onboard chargers. Then we have seen in detail some of the charging systems, different communication which is happening, different exchange of messages which are happening, how it is been happening, how the connections are made, how the EVSEs and the EVs are logically connected and they communicate with each other following different protocols. And then briefly we have seen some of the key components of the charging stations and what goes in a charging stations. So, with this course we have tried to introduce the different aspect of the EV charging systems, right from the power conversion unit to some of the discussions related to communications. However, this is a quite evolving field. Every day is new standards coming in, different governments, different countries are coming up with features in the chargers, coming up with a new standard determining different features in the standard. So, this course will help you out to understand whatever is existing as of now at the current stage. So, thank you very much for listening to this. I hope you have enjoyed these lectures. Thank you.